First item on the agenda is citizens' concerns, and this is for any issues that citizens want to bring up that won't be discussed on other agenda items this evening. Are there any citizens who wish to raise concerns at this point? Seeing none, the next item on the agenda is the chairman's update. First, want to mention that there are several votes that ballot elections that are scheduled. One is for tomorrow for the Minuteman Regional High School new building, and we will have a further discussion about that on the agenda tonight. But the poll is district-wide under a special statute that governs the regional technical high schools. The poll will be open from noontime to 8 p.m. tomorrow, only at one location in town, at R.J. Gray Junior High School. So we encourage everyone to come out tomorrow and vote on the Minuteman Regional Tech building issue. For the presidential election this year, there have been several pieces of legislation that have changed the voting procedures. One is you can now register to vote online. So if you're not registered to vote yet, I believe you have until October 9th to register for the presidential election. You can actually go online and vote. If you go to the Secretary of State's website, I'm sure the information is there. You need certain documents, I think, to be able to register online, but that is available. The town will also be conducting, under this new legislation, early voting procedures. I believe 10 days before the election, we will have voting available to citizens at different hours, and we'll be talking about that more at our meeting on next Monday night, the 26th. I believe the plan is that the voting booths will be set up here in Town Hall, and again, for those 10 days that the new statutes allow for early voting in Massachusetts for presidential elections. There'll be different hours when people can come to Town Hall before the actual November presidential election date and vote early. The Community Preservation Committee is now in the process of taking new applications for community preservation grants that will be awarded at town meeting in 2017. There are several projects that are going on in town from last year's round of funding, and you drive by the skate park, there's a new skate bowl that's being built. The sports center at Lally Field, the Miracle Field out at Narra Park, is being built. Two buildings have been donated, modular structures that will be put together to have restrooms and a concession stand for people who are using Miracle Field, and several other projects are going on. Thursday night, the CPC will be holding its annual public hearing to determine the needs of the town. If you have any projects that address historic, affordable housing, open space, or recreation issues in town that you wish to possibly see funded, you can come to the meeting on Thursday night in the library and learn all about how you get an application before the Community Preservation Committee. The town has been awarded recently $400,000 from the state as part of a Complete Streets grant, and I want to commend the engineering department and Corey York for putting together a community forum to identify the uses that the town would use that money for. As you know, we have a nationally recognized complete streets policy in town. The state came out with grants, and the maximum amount you could get under the grant was $400,000. They were so impressed with Acton's application that they awarded the full amount possible. So there will be work going on town to implement some of those complete streets policy issues, including working on the turn from Main Street to the new train station on Maple Street, which is needs some work, and also finding ways to connect up the Assabet River Rail Trail that will be coming into the train station and the Bruce Freeman Rail Trail in North Acton with bike paths and more walkable access between those two bike paths. Let's see, Concord Water Department has a proposal to build a new water treatment facility at Nagog Pond. We had a hearing last Monday evening on that, and that's been continued till November 1st. But they've also been required to file a full environmental impact report on their plans for the new water treatment plant. The State Office of Energy and Environmental Affairs required them to file an entire environmental impact report, which is not just necessarily strictly environmental issues, includes historic, archaeological aspects of the plan, wildlife impacts, air, water, all of those issues. That's been published by the state, and I believe we have until September 23rd to submit comments. So if you have interest in any of those issues, you can go on Concord's website. The Town of Concord has a copy of the environmental impact report they filed on the website. They have now added a fence, which is a new feature to their proposal, which I don't believe was included in the original filing. But you can comment on any issues in that environmental impact report that might interest you by September 23rd. And finally, we have this litigation that the Americans United for Separation of Church and State, a national organization, is representing 13 Acton citizens who filed a complaint in State Superior Court seeking to enjoin the town's decision to grant funds under the Community Preservation Act to two churches, the Acton Center Congregational Church and South Acton Congregational Church, for purposes of historic preservation of their properties. We had an argument in Superior Court last Wednesday. Town Council Anderson and Krieger represented the town. The Americans United represented the citizens who filed the complaint. The judge took it all under advisement and will issue a decision, we expect, within the next few weeks. It's becoming quite an expensive proposition for the town. So far, we've spent about $85,000 in attorney's fees to town council's office, and which doesn't surprise me, having worked on cases similar to this in the past, that they require, this is a constitutional issue under the state constitution, requires an enormous amount of resources in order to put together the legal arguments that are necessary to defend the case. We have been denied coverage under the town's insurance policy, which covers certain civil rights claims. The basic claim is that the town violated the citizens' civil rights by violating the Massachusetts Constitution, which prohibits grants to religious institutions. We are now dealing with our insurance carrier, the Massachusetts Interlocal Insurance Association, to argue that maybe they should cover us, that we don't agree with their interpretation of the policy. But even if they don't cover us, they should give us some funds in light of the importance of the issue to the entire state and all other community preservation Act communities, as well as the state itself, which grants funds to churches to repair historic properties. So we're dealing with the insurance company. They've offered some money. We're trying to go back and forth with them about whether we can resolve that dispute. And that concludes my chairman's report. Mr. Town Manager.
Thank you. And in regard to the complete street grant, I will be attending a ceremony on Wednesday afternoon at the State House for the 11 communities that were funded for the Complete Street program for this year. In addition to us, it was Cambridge, Lowell, Westwood, Arlington, Framingham, Medford, Winchester, Beverly, Lawrence, and Stoughton. So Mass DOT is having a little ceremony that afternoon. We did receive a free cash notification, certification from Department of Revenue, I think on Friday maybe, and general funds free cash is $4,873,062. That is down from prior years, but keep in mind that we did put $1.8 million this past year into stabilization. They don't count stabilization as free cash, so we have $2 million in stabilization plus general fund, so it makes it more like $6.8 million. We're going to have our kickoff meeting of the Capital Improvement Planning Committee this Thursday night. Mostly get organized and share some information, work out schedules, and come up with a work schedule for that committee. In mid-August, we went in front of the Department of Energy Resources with our electric aggregation plan. We were asked a lot of questions by their council, and our aggregation plan has been approved by DOER. Next step is to bring the aggregation plan in front of the Department of Public Utilities. We have a hearing in front of them on October 27th. Assuming that goes well and assuming they make a timely decision, our game plan is to put our electric aggregation out to bid on November 21st and hopefully make awards in mid-December, thereby doing public outreach January and February with a start date for electric aggregation in March. And finally, I'll be attending the International City Management Association annual meeting starting this Saturday, and I'll return on Wednesday the 28th in the evening. So the next meeting, Mark Hall, the Assistant Town Manager, will be covering for me. And that's my report.
Okay, thank you. We have a couple of minutes before we call the first hearing. I thought maybe we could take out of order number 6 on the Selectmen's business to assign a date on the license suspension for Red, White, and Brew. I wasn't at the Selectmen's meeting where this issue was heard, but does anybody have a suggestion for a date?
Well, I know that in the past, there had, the prior hearing, when we ultimately decided we didn't have to assign a date, I think there was discussion about assigning the date when they did the most business. My thought was that if we want to test their understanding of the law, we ought to assign a date when they don't have business and make sure that they're open, like on a Saturday and a Friday. So don't have any preference other than, pick a day. But I really think that a good way to put them through their paces is to have them be able to stay open on the days when logically most people are going to be in the store, which I assume is not Tuesday or something like that.
Any other comments?
I didn't really understand what you said. You first thought that we should do it on a busy day.
Let them stay open on a busy day when they have to practice what they supposedly understand now, which is that you have to card anybody. Basically they said they're carding everybody, which is good. But, I think that the biggest challenge is on the days when it's busiest and when you're most likely to have, I don't know when it is that younger people tend to go to the liquor store, but I would assume that it's at the weekend. So my thought was rather than try to punish them by denying them business on the busiest days, make them show that they know what they're supposed to do on the busiest days by letting them stay open and pick another day when they should be closed, or at least not be able to sell alcohol.
Okay.
You want to suggest a date?
What did you say about Friday and Saturday? You would like it to be, or you don't want it to be a Friday or Saturday?
Yeah, I just said, let them stay open. I'm assuming Friday and Saturday are the days when they're busiest.
I thought we were thinking about which weeks, like a busy day on a certain week.
We have to pick one day, because I think the police chief's recommendation was that just a one-day suspension, so.
Right, I didn't know if you meant you didn't want to do New Year's Eve or something. So when you said don't do their busiest day.
I would want to get it done with fairly soon.
Why don't we do 2 Wednesdays from now? It gives them enough time for us to give them notice and for them to prepare for that, and it's a random day in the middle of the week. So I would recommend that we have the suspension, I will make a motion that we suspend their license. I think that's Wednesday, October 5th. Is that correct?
No, what is?
Is that a Wednesday?
Okay, second.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So I will make a motion that we suspend the liquor license for one day for Red, White, and Brew on October 5th.
Second. Oh, okay.
All in favor of the motion?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. All right, notice of hearing. A public hearing of the Acton Board of Selectmen will be held on Monday, September 19, 2016, at 7:15 p.m. in the Francis Faulkner Hearing Room 204 of the Acton Town Hall, 472 Main Street, Acton, for National Grid to install and maintain approximately 190 feet, more or less, of 2-inch main on Pope Road from the existing 2-inch gas main at house number 142 southerly to house number 134 for new gas service. Plans may be inspected at Town Hall during normal business hours. National Grid.
Good evening. My name is Dennis Regan, and I'm the permit representative from National Grid. And tonight, National Grid hereby respectfully requests your consent to install and maintain approximately 190 feet more or less of 2-inch gas main in Pope Road, Acton, from the existing 2-inch gas main at house number 142 southerly to house 134 for a new gas service.
Okay, and we have copies of the plan in our packet here, and a memo from the engineering department that says they don't foresee any problems with granting the petition under engineering issues. So, any members of the board have any questions?
Well, I know that there are a couple of people, I know that Green Acton has made some suggestions to the board, and I know I got a follow-up inquiry from Jim Snyder-Grant. I don't know if it went to everybody or not, but, and he himself acknowledges that he doesn't expect us to deny this extension of the gas pipeline, but, you know, maybe the thought is to start some sort of a planning process for reducing the town's dependence on fossil fuels and the like. I think that he's right, that I am not going to, I would not be comfortable with refusing to approve this extension, in part because I myself have gas service, and frankly, unless there's an alternative that is just so attractive that of course I would switch from gas. I'm not going to do it, and I don't think that I would want somebody who's looking for gas service to have to pick another option. You know, I think that at some point perhaps there will be much more viable and practicable alternatives, but I don't think that we're there yet. But anyhow, so I just wanted to let Green Acton know that how I'm probably going to come out, but I am sympathetic to the idea. I think it's probably going to be on a state level, because I read some material, I think it was from the Magic study about gas pipeline leaks, that 50% of the state is on gas service, so you've really got a lot of customers to try, you'd have to convert them to something else. So I think that long-term, maybe we're going to end up going there, but in the short term for this project, we're probably not. So that's all.
So just to acknowledge what Jan said and the letters or emails we received from Jim and others related to the issue, what I would like to see us do is, I'm fine, approving this application, but we've had a couple of these come up where we've said we'll discuss the issue in the future. So what I would recommend and would like us to do tonight is to pick a future date for one of our meetings and schedule having an actual policy discussion on this issue, instead of doing this when it just comes up with these specific projects, because we're all very reluctant to deny hooking up gas to somebody, an actual person's house, as opposed to having a policy discussion, and then request input from Green Acton, other citizen groups, the Green Advisory Board, the Engineering Department, Town Council, and others, but to set an actual date tonight, because otherwise we don't end up doing it. So that's my recommendation. I'm willing to approve this, but I would like us to pick a date, probably, I would say like our second meeting in December or in January or something, and that would give us enough time to solicit that input, and then have an actual policy discussion outside of any specific project requests.
Okay, well, we need to follow up on that, but before we do that, it's 7:20, and I need to call the hearing that's scheduled for 7:20, so notice of hearing. The Acton Board of Selectmen will hold a public hearing on September 19th, 2016 at 7:20 p.m. in the Francis Faulkner Hearing Room in Town Hall, 472 Main Street, Acton, for an order to show cause for an alleged overservice incident and liquor license violation, Mass General Laws 138, Section 12, at the Red Raven, 5 Nagog Park Drive, Acton, Mass. The documentation can be inspected at Town Hall during normal business hours. Okay, so any other board members have any comments? And then we need to get input from citizens who might want to address the gas line extension issue. But any other board members have comments? All right.
Just say I agree. I was thinking of creative policy changes, how we could proactively work, so it would be an interesting discussion.
Okay, well, if everybody agrees with that, before we take any other citizen input, why don't we pick a date? What do we got, Lisa, in December? What are our dates in December?
Sorry.
I got December 5th and 19th on my schedule.
That sounds right. Wait, and which one do you do the budget on? 19th, so maybe, let's say December 5th?
December 5th?
Yeah.
Seems reasonable.
Everybody agree with that?
And then, Peter, maybe you
Okay.
could put an email out to the all boards and committees email, and I'll talk to you offline about some of that.
Okay.
But, okay.
Yes, any members of the citizens wish to speak to this issue?
Hi, Jim Snyder Grant, 18 Half Moon Hill. So thanks for alluding to my letter. I didn't actually see it in the packet, so I brought some copies that I can hand out afterwards. But let me just summarize it, because you've already apparently all seen it already. You get requests like this for natural gas line extensions to new houses, and I believe the time has passed to automatically saying yes, and instead to start considering the global warming potential implications of adding new fossil fuel infrastructure that lock in additional natural gas use for decades. As Janet alluded to, I don't expect you guys to suddenly say, oh, of course, let's start denying them right now, since the applicant has never had a chance to, even consider this possible change. So, thank you for agreeing to schedule a date. I think that's an exactly appropriate next step. I think 2 additional steps would be to have the staff have available for builders and homeowners some information on greener and more efficient alternatives to natural gas technologies, the main one being mini-split air source heat pumps. These have lower operating costs than conventional heating and cooling systems and have a lower impact on climate warming via greenhouse gases. And finally, I think it would be good to have the land use departments tell new customers and builders and maybe realtors that a policy process has begun, citizens are speaking up against new natural gas infrastructure, and that it may be time to have a moratorium in place while you're developing your policy. So briefly, what's the problem with natural gas? Little review here. Natural gas, mostly methane. Methane leaks happen at production, storage, processing, and distribution. Methane's lighter than air and rises into the atmosphere. Methane's an extremely potent greenhouse gas. You may remember that big gas leak last year out in Porter Ranch. Some of the publicity for that had infrared photos of the gas leak, which showed this big black plume. So natural gas is invisible to visible light, but it's almost entirely opaque to infrared. And that's the key to how destructive it is and how much global warming potential it has. When sunlight comes down, mostly through visible light, it cuts right through a lot of the atmosphere, but when the heat tries to radiate back out, mostly as infrared, it's blocked by some gases, especially methane and also, of course, by CO2. But the opacity of methane means that over a 20-year period, methane has at least 80 times greater global warming potential than even than CO2. And that 20-year period, that's a critical time period for us to avoid the worst effects of climate change. So doing what we can to stop additional methane is an important part of slowing global warming. And I'm just asking you to consider changing your processes for new homes. As Janet mentioned, there's plenty of us, including myself, who have natural gas now. With existing homes, it's expensive. That capital investment to switch over to an alternate heating system is expensive and usually doesn't make financial sense unless there's a big repair being faced. But for a new house, operating costs of alternate systems are already less. It's time not to have new natural gas infrastructure. Once you add it in, it's locked in place. It's very difficult to stop using it for financial reasons. So once it's in there, you've got that you've got those 2 or 3 decades of use locked in. The Supreme Judicial Court in Massachusetts recently explained to the Commonwealth that the targets of the Global Warming Solutions Act are legally binding, and that the Commonwealth is not doing enough to meet those goals. You may have just read that Governor Baker has announced a new series of policy and regulatory initiatives to attempt to turn the corner on greenhouse gas emissions. At the same time, July of this year had the warmest global mean monthly temperature ever recorded. Time's running short. We need to do what we can. Thank you for considering this.
Deborah Symes, 109 Concord Road. I'm jumping up as a member of Green Acton to say thank you for thinking about this. We're delighted that you've set a date, and just that Green Acton will be happy to help provide information and shore up whatever, process you guys are going to undertake. Thank you.
Can I ask a couple of questions? I don't know whether Jim or Deborah's the best person to deal with this, but I mean, my head is kind of spinning, clean burning natural gas. I mean, I bought a 95% efficient boiler. I'm thinking righteous. I'm doing the right thing for the environment. It's costing me less money. And now I find that all these leaks are causing more than all the cars, more pollution and global warming than all the cars on the road or something. So you said something that I have a question about. You said it was cheaper operating. You're talking about electrical from power plants. Is that that's the alternative you're talking about? And it's cheaper to operate all electrical? Used to be in the old days, all electrical would bankrupt you. So
plain old electrical heat is still more expensive than natural gas. The alternative I'm talking about is to use air-sourced heat pumps, which take advantage of the temperature potential that already exists in the air. So these systems are, when you think about the energy coming in through your electric line and the heat that's coming out, are multiple times more than 100% efficient because they're taking advantage of the energy that's already there in the atmosphere.
So you would have to, I mean, right now, it's my understanding, maybe there's few coal power plants around, but most of the power plants are natural gas, right? Isn't that how they're powering the plants? But they have these green energy requirements under the state.
Right. Well, the New England mix is changing quickly, but you're right. It's primarily natural gas. But there's nuclear there, which of course has very little global warming. There's some coal, there's very little oil, and there's renewable power, as you're saying, ramping up very quickly. The thing is that turning natural gas into energy at a large central power plant is more efficient than turning it into energy at millions of little houses. So even if we had a entirely natural gas electrical system, having the control and the efficiency right at a central plant is more effective.
Okay, and then my final question is, do you have any legal authority, or are you aware of any towns that have put moratoriums on new connections to gas pipelines, or can we do that?
I haven't done the legal research. I'm not a lawyer, so that's why I thought when Katie mentioned consulting with legal counsel might be a good next step. I agree. I know that you certainly have the authority to approve or deny natural gas hookups. I don't know under what circumstances you're allowed to make those approvals or denials.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions from any board members? Okay, thanks very much. Any other citizens who want to address this issue? Okay, then I guess we need to vote on whether to grant the petition of National Grid to extend the gas line to 134 Pope Road.
I move to approve the application to install and maintain approximately 190 feet, more or less, of 2-inch main in Pope Road from the existing 2-inch gas main at house number 142 southerly to house number 134 for new gas service.
Second.
All in favor of the motion?
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion carries. All right, we're going to move on to the Red Raven hearing. Let me first ask everyone who intends to testify at this hearing, please raise your right hand to get sworn in.
Do you promise to tell the whole truth, nothing but the truth?
All right, let the record reflect that all the witnesses have been properly sworn. We will first hear from the Acton Police Department and then ask representatives of Red Raven to respond.
Good evening, Mr. Chair. Deputy Chief Rich Burrows of the Acton Police Department. We're here tonight for a potential over-serving incident at Red Raven from this past July. We have Sergeant Fred Renschler here to read the facts of the case, and we have Officers A.J. Rotella and Officers John Collins here to testify if needed.
Thank you, Deputy Chief. On July 8th of this year, at approximately 5:08 in the evening, the Acton Police as well as the Acton Fire were called to respond to the parking lot of the Red Raven for a reported motor vehicle crash with injuries. Officer Rotella and Detective Collins were both responded to the scene, and they conducted their investigation. Upon their arrival, the officers determined that the motor vehicle that caused the accident struck a parked vehicle which was occupied at the time. The vehicle that was struck was hit almost broadside, and the force of the impact was strong enough to cause that vehicle to be pushed 3 to 4 feet from its parking space. And the force of that caused the occupant to be injured, as well as broken glass from the driver's side window door that caused injuries as well. The injured party was treated by the Acton Fire Department, and the officers began their investigation with the person responsible for causing the crash. The party was identified, and it was determined that he exhibited signs of alcohol impairment, those being his eyes were bloodshot and glassy, he had a strong odor of alcohol on his breath, and his speech was slow and slurred. The subject was asked where he was coming from, and he said he just had lunch at the Red Raven. By now, it was 5 p.m. The subject was asked if he had been drinking, and he stated he consumed 4 to 5 beers. At this point, Officer Rotella began to administer a battery of field sobriety tests. Upon the conclusion of these tests, the officer formed the opinion that the subject was impaired. He was arrested and charged with OUI, and he was transported back to the Acton Police Station. Just as a note, the subject refused the breathalyzer while he was in custody, so there's no BT reading for the board. Following the subject's arrest, Detective Collins proceeded over to the Red Raven and spoke to Jennifer. I'm sorry, she's here tonight. Thank you. He spoke to Jennifer, and he advised Jennifer of his inquiry, and Jennifer supplied him a guest receipt which indicated the subject had purchased 7 drinks, those consisting of 5 Ballast Point IPAs and 2 Trogs Neck Perpetual IPAs, as well as 2 food items that the subject purchased, as well as a brisket sandwich and an order of fish tacos. His stay began at the Red Raven at approximately 12 p.m., as noted on the slip. I'm not sure if the board received a copy of the slip. So it's handwritten in here at 12 p.m., and his stay concluded at approximately 5 p.m., as we can surmise. There's also a copy of the beer menu with the specific alcohol. If the board has that, I have copies for the board. Further on down the road, on July 21st, the subject that was arrested pled out 13 days later. He pled out to the OUI offense at the Concord District Court and received a continuance without a finding for a period of 1 year. As a part of the plea and disposition, the subject was asked, as customarily is done at the end of any OUI case, he was asked where he had his last drink on the day in question, and he responded to the court under oath that he had his last drink at the Red Raven. Again, as you already know, Officer Rotella and Detective Collins are here for any further questions, but that's essentially the facts of the case.
Franny, you have any questions?
I did a minute ago, but I can't remember. Has Red Raven come before us recently? I couldn't remember if that was one that we have had recently.
I can remember one prior time when we had a hearing on Red Raven.
Okay.
Do you have any records on the past history of Red Raven?
There was, to my knowledge, I believe, there was one prior incident that took place in January 2014 where a party was arrested in the town of Groton, and they indicated their last drink was that they were coming from the Raven.
If I remember correctly, that was an employee.
Yeah, that's what I was vaguely remembering. Okay. I don't remember my question, so.
Janet?
Okay. First question, because I was reading the Concord, the district court sentence, and honestly, it's in the box. It says 7/2017, 24D program, 1/2 bar, 60 days LOL, which I assume doesn't mean laugh out loud. But can you decipher that, somebody?
Sure. If you're looking at page 2 of the disposition sheet I think you're referring to, the case was continued until 7/20/2017. That would be the 1-year probation. The 9024D program is a standard OUI disposition if you do plea out and instead of taking the matter to trial, of which you have usually a 45-day loss of license in the 9024D. Because there was an accident involved, the court upped it to a 60-day loss of license. That's what the LOL stands for. It's just court shorthand. The last line says RST TBD, which means restitution to be determined. There was a restitution hearing, and the insurance company made the victim whole. There is a separate civil suit. And the half-day bar is the half-day Brains at Risk program, which is actually mandated if you're over a certain alcohol, or if you do refuse the breathalyzer, the judge has the ability to order the half-day bar. So that's what the BAR stands for. It doesn't mean bar, it means Brains at Risk, but this is all court shorthand.
Okay, well, thank you, I appreciate that. I just, these people who deal with district court all the time probably know what that is, but I had a question. I know that in the report, the driver, the one who had been drinking, seemed, he said the other car just came out of nowhere. I mean, I assume that that's the extent of his explanation for the collision, is that he didn't say anything else. Yeah.
I believe that was the case, but the officers are here. If they can, if you would like, maybe they could shed a little bit more light as to how that whole transaction came about.
And he wasn't hurt, right? It was the driver of the car that was hit that, well, the car was really badly damaged. I mean, the glass shattered and everything. It sounded pretty, like the impact was pretty bad, but.
Correct.
And then did anybody kind of reconstruct the accident? I mean, based on where the assumption was, based on where the second car was, the hit car was, and then where that driver, who was, of course, telling the truth, had said he was, that the impact of the first cars hitting the second car had pushed the second car way out of position from where the car had started?
The photos I have are relatively they kind of speak for themselves. I mean, the only one I could, didn't bring enough copies for the board, but I can pass this down. It's pretty much, it appears he was angling through the parking lot and was trying to cut through parking spaces and hit the parked vehicle, and just, that's how it all stopped right there. I'm not saying a significant amount of speed was involved. It doesn't appear like that was a total factor. It was just his negligence and inability to make proper judgments while he was navigating through parking spaces. And if I'm not correct, you were there. Did you have anything else to add, AJ?
If you have anything to add, you should speak at the microphone, because you're on TV, you're being recorded.
Adriel Tala, officer for Acton Police Department. Nothing really else happened there, but the parked car seemed to be parked. It was in the lines when we got there. It seemed to shift over the right line, as if he was hit prior to that. I would assume that he would not be exactly there, but the driver also said that he was driving and wasn't really paying attention, so, I mean.
Okay, well, thank you. No, I think that's all for me right now. I'll let my colleagues have a turn at asking questions.
Thank you.
Chin Sung, you have questions?
Just wanted to confirm that this is just after 5 o'clock and that the accident and the receipt seems to have been closed out at 5:30. And so I was wondering sort of why the receipt was closed at 5:30 when this person had clearly left the establishment earlier than that.
I'm not the Red Raven. I can proffer two possible suggestions, and I'm sure they could probably give the exact, but I would say maybe when Officer Collins, the timeline would fit, when Detective Collins went over to retrieve the receipt, that could be approximately 5:34 p.m., or just their clocks could be off, or maybe there's a third reason unbeknownst to myself, so, but I could just put those out as possible, plausible suggestions.
Yeah, no, I was just curious as far as, this will involve the Red Raven as well, some of the timings and sort of, because it seems, obviously this accident occurred in the parking lot of the establishment.
Correct.
And so, obviously there's, I'm curious as far as, timings, I mean, I have more questions for the Red Raven as far as, when these drinks were ordered and that kind of stuff, as far as, how it's possible that someone would walk out into the parking lot and be this intoxicated and not have that intoxication noticed in the establishment.
Katie?
I have no questions for the officers at this time. I'd like to hear from the Red Raven.
Sure, do you have another question?
I just wanted to confirm, actually maybe from the council, we're only looking to see what they were like before their last drink. So I always have the same question every time. Is there anything we can do to require observation of the person when they're paying their bill, so that there's a requirement that you must call the police if somebody looks intoxicated after their last drink? It's always so odd, because we are determining if they were drunk, visibly drunk before their last drink, right? I just wanted to confirm that that's what we're trying to find out, if...
That's correct. So the relevant question is whether there were visible signs of intoxication before the last drink was served. In some cases, that can be shown through eyewitness testimony. In other cases, there might be conduct that gives rise to an inference that somebody should have known the person was intoxicated. But the critical moment is when the last drink was served.
Right, and so I would, the same way as we set a hearing to talk generally about policy, I would love if someday we would talk about the policy of what restaurants in our town should do if they see someone after their last drink looking intoxicated.
Officer, do you know how serious these injuries were? Did you see the ambulance run report, or?
Could I have Detective Collins speak to that?
Evening, Detective John Collins, Acton PD. I personally interviewed the victim inside the ambulance. He was conscious, alert. He sustained some minor head injuries at the time, but I'm not a medical physician or anything like that, but just through my training and experience, he did suffer some minor injuries to the head. But other than that, the fire and EMS took control there and transported to Emerson. But as far as visible injuries, there were minor ones.
Thank you. I don't have any further questions. Counsel, do you have any questions for the officers? Representatives of Red Raven.
Well, we're not here to argue or disagree what happened. We don't believe that the Acton PD or this board has anything against the Red Raven. I believe, everything happened as the police officer described, except I thought the vehicles, one car was pulling out and the other one was pulling in. That's how it happened. It wasn't a car traveling through parking spaces or what have you. One vehicle was in his space, one vehicle was coming in, he was pulling out, and they kind of bumped into each other. That was my understanding of the evening. We, at the Red Raven, we're pretty strict about serving. We have regular meetings. Where Jennifer holds the meeting, she covers everything A to Z, whether large items or small items. She covers everything in detail. I cover two things in the meeting only. The first thing I cover is when a customer comes in the building, you serve them one drink, we are now responsible for that person. So make sure that even that first drink, doesn't matter if they were down the street and had 5 drinks, that first drink, you must know whether that customer should have that drink or not. The second thing I cover is that, I think it just flew out of my head. The second thing I cover is that we do not need the money that badly that I will serve a customer one more drink than they should have. So those are the two things I cover. Jennifer covers everything else. That day, it was a slow day, so usually either Jennifer or I will be on the floor any time of day or night. That day was a little slower. Jennifer was in the office doing some office work. Bartender was a seasoned bartender. She should have known better. She missed the call. And, we parted ways since then. But all we can do is educate as much as possible, tell them our rules, I don't know what else we can do to guarantee that something like this will not happen.
Sorry, I wrote something, so let's read it. So that day, the customer, when they left the Raven, I didn't see them walk out the door. If we're ever in that position where a judgment call is missed, we do intervene, and we do make sure that that person doesn't leave the building. And it shouldn't have happened, and it did happen, and we're very sorry for that. Using that, we're known as a restaurant. We're not known as a place where people go to get late night drinks, people go to get drunk. We do not really serve shots ever. Even the nights where we're very, very busy and could take advantage of a vast volume of business, like Thanksgiving Eve, we've closed early. and made sure that people were not there for an extended period of time and that everybody leaving the building was okay. So I feel that because we're on site day to day, and we truly are owner-operated, or family-operated even, it's not something that happens very often, and it shouldn't happen at all, and we've used what happened in the parking lot that day. I've used it as a very vivid example to the younger employees in their 20s that are, they're going out drinking too at night, and they don't see a problem with people having a few beers or a shot or whatnot. We've used this as an example to educate them on, beyond the serve safe and tips, really reading your customers, seeing if someone's buying a round of drinks, seeing if they're moving tables. People are buying drinks for someone that's not on their tab. I've used this case specifically as an example to everybody, every single new person and every single employee that was already there. And I don't know, we just want to apologize. That's really it. We're not going to say it didn't happen. We're not going to defend why the employee served this customer or overserved the customer. But it happened, and we're sorry for that. And we have taken, even further initiative with the employees since then. And the employee, like John said, is no longer with the Raven that did let this happen, so.
Katie, you have questions?
Sure. So the woman who was the server, was she new? I know you said she was a seasoned bartender. Was she new to the Red Raven?
No.
Had she been with you guys
She
for a
had been
long
with us for
time?
a couple of years.
Okay. And then, did you speak to her afterwards to, hear what she remembered about the incident? Did she remember, anything about the person's demeanor or anything like that?
So her impression, and this is, one of the main reasons why we parted ways, is that, the client had eaten lunch, they had been there an extended period of time, they seemed fine, because there was different people coming and going from the group, that they seemed fine, he seemed fine when he left the building.
Okay. So was the client, he was with a group, he wasn't
There's
just by
people
himself?
coming and going, he was not by himself.
Okay, but all of the drinks that were on this tab, were they all?
I don't know.
We don't know. Okay,
No,
if
that
he
was
had
a
them.
little bit of the confusion, that day, because they were there for almost 6 hours. They got there before 12 o'clock, and he left after 5 o'clock. And just to address the 5:30 time on the receipt, that was when I was asked to print it.
Okay.
So if I printed it at midnight, it would have been midnight. It wasn't when it was closed.
Okay.
But yeah, they had different coworkers popping in. There was people at the bar they ended up sitting with for a little bit. And so, no, I don't know how many drinks he had ultimately.
Okay. So, and was the person at the bar, or were they at a table?
3 different locations throughout the afternoon.
And so was this one server, was she the only person who served the client?
She says she is.
Okay. But she didn't remember how many
No.
drinks he had. Okay. All right, those are my questions for now. Thank you.
Jin Sung.
Okay, I guess, Katie already cleared this up, but so that you don't have any idea as far as which of these drinks were served, if any, do you have any recollection as far as how many people this group was, or do you have any knowledge of sort of how many people overall this tab might represent?
Yep, so as John mentioned, I was in and out of the office. I happened to be out front when they arrived. It was 2 people at the bar. They each ordered an item for lunch, and those 2 items are on the receipt. Then they proceed, like it said, we said it, they were there almost 6 hours. So I know that they bought drinks for another couple at the bar. I know they were sitting out on the deck for a little bit. This is all hearsay, though. I didn't witness most of it, so.
But throughout most of the period, it was 2 individuals?
It was 2 individuals.
And then one of them left earlier and before?
I am
and then
not sure.
You do not know
I
whether
don't
or
know.
not?
I know they weren't in the parking lot together when the accident occurred, because that's the next time I saw the individual.
I see. Okay, and you don't know where the second individual who was not involved in the accident was at this time, whether or not he was still in the establishment?
I don't believe he was.
Okay.
Yeah, there was almost no one there at that point. There was a couple customers sitting on the deck, and I don't think he was there.
No, he was definitely not.
Yeah.
So then it would be reasonable to surmise that he had left earlier before the accident?
I'm assuming so, yes.
Okay.
But I don't know.
And was there, and so there was, you said there were people coming and going as far as that's out in the other areas of the restaurant, but that this tab only represents what was purchased by those two individuals?
I have to say, I don't know. I didn't, because I wasn't out on the floor and I wasn't out on the deck, which is where they were sitting for the afternoon. I'm not sure. I know that the bartender said at one point a few of their coworkers were there because they had made a reservation for the following Friday, and they were all going to come as a group. So I really don't know. So I apologize.
Okay.
Janet?
I have a very untechnical question, because I did look up online. I was trying to figure out how big these beers are, and at least the Ballast one is 12 ounces, and I guess Trogs, I don't know how you pronounce that. I couldn't find that. Is that another 12-ounce beer?
That one served as a 16-ounce.
The Ballast?
The Ballast,
Yeah.
I think no, so these are both draft items. So we serve both of those beers as
okay.
pints.
Okay,
So 16 ounces.
They're 15 ounces, okay.
16, yes.
15, okay. No, it's interesting, because when I was logging on, I get a little question. You're of age, you're drinking age. I said, yeah, very, very strict, but it's probably easily circumvented. I got a little confused at one of the responses. You're saying most of the time there were two people sitting there. This person number one, I guess, was sort of socializing with people who kept coming in, is that, and whatnot? Some of them were friends, or some of them were new friends that
I
were
think that's
sitting at
what
the bar.
happened. I know they started the day as two people
Yeah.
coming for lunch.
Yeah, and so, but most of the time it's two people, and then you said the second person left early.
I don't know what time he left.
Or
Right.
there were two people in the lot, but they weren't this person number one and his friend from the bar. It was just the other driver.
I believe the second person exited and this person...
Yeah, I think they left at about the same
About the
time.
same time, I would say,
But you don't-
a minute apart.
Yeah, but you don't know whether the second person was out there and observed. I mean...
Oh, I don't know.
No, I
Okay.
don't.
Okay.
I have no idea.
Okay. And you said it was a slow day? So, but so it wasn't easier to sort of keep an eye on?
No, not that.
Yeah.
Just normally when it's, if it's really busy, we're out there, not really busy. If it's busy, we're out there all the time because we're bringing food out from the kitchen, we're talking to
Yeah.
customers, we're helping out, we're just present on the floor. And John came in a little bit late. You were in around 3:30. I came in at 11, and I was in the office
Okay.
after lunch. So we kind of had lunch. I went into the office for a couple hours, and then came out. And at that point, they were on the deck. I actually didn't even know they were still there at that point. But I normally catch that sort of thing. If I see people there for an extended period of time, I look. If I see a big group of people coming after work, and one person's ordering a round of drinks, for their company group, I'll watch that. I'll look at the tab, and I missed it, so.
And then there was, I guess, I know Katie asked, about the bartender or the server or whatever. I don't know if you had a waitress and you had the person operating the bar, or if there were two different people serving the customer. But I didn't know. I know that I think the bartender, I think John said, should have been more careful or paying attention. I assume when you have people come on board, they get the tips training, the training about when to not serve and all that sort of thing, what to keep a lookout for. And I know you've said that in the wake of this episode, you're using the accident as an example of how things can go awry with the customers, the employees who still are with you. So, all right. Well, that's all I have for now. Thank you.
And I will say, just one kind of side note, a lot of people will reference the tips and serve safe training, and that, one thing says 1 drink per hour is okay for individual A, 2 drinks per hour is okay for individual B. They cite a lot of numbers in this training, and we take that a step further and say that, 1 drink for individual A, if it's a martini, might not be okay. You have to know your customer. And we always try to bring it above that, beyond the 1980s training video of serve safe and tips.
It is two employees, there was a waitress and there was a bartender.
No, there's a bartender, one employee.
Oh, it was one?
Yes.
Did
Yeah, they
everything, and that's
moved,
the person.
the customers moved from the bar outside at one point, and she told me she continued to take care of them.
Okay, so it was, that's the person that was fired.
She wasn't fired.
Oh, no, I didn't, maybe I misheard you.
She was put on probation and left.
Oh, okay.
She left. She ended up leaving on her own.
Okay. That's,
Thank you.
I think this case is a little unusual from a lot of other cases we hear where there's an interval between the person leaving the establishment and an accident or getting arrested for OUI or whatever. I mean, it's pretty clear he was failing a OUI test or failing the drunken tests shortly after he left your establishment. So from what I'm hearing you saying, you're admitting that he had too much to drink before he left your establishment.
What we're saying is we know he left our establishment last. I mean,
Yeah.
it happened in the parking lot. I know the individual had a cooler full of beer in his car. I know that they were out and about all day long after cutting off from work very early in the day, but we served him his last drink, yeah, so.
And this is a Friday afternoon. Aren't Fridays one of your more busy days generally?
The lunch can be busy 11:30 to 12:30, 1 o'clock, and then there's sort of a lull. And sometimes it can start up at 4:35, sometimes it starts up 6:30. But, I mean, as we have been since we opened, and we've kind of always said this, we're there every day and every night, so.
I think the officer mentioned there was a civil suit here. Have you folks been sued?
No.
Okay. And have you considered putting video cameras in your establishment at all?
We have video to monitor.
As well as, yeah.
Yep, we have video to monitor the external property and for employee theft. We've kind of always maintained that. But we're really just a restaurant. We're not a late-night place, we're not a party place, we're not ever. So, no, we haven't needed it. We have no violence, we haven't had any issues, besides this issue. So for that, we haven't seen the need to cover all 10,000 square feet and, recording video cameras. It's really for our own protection, employees stealing and break-ins and things like that.
Yeah. Okay. I have no other questions. Anyone else on the board?
how often do you have to tell someone they can't have another drink?
Not very often. I would say, once or twice a week we have a refusal to serve. Someone comes in and we ask them to leave. And a lot of them are known people from the area. And then, every so often, especially, if it's a regular customer, we're really watching what they're having and tell them, just start serving them water. But it's not often. It's not a daily occurrence.
And at that point, if somebody does have a drink and you see them walking out, how often does that happen?
It doesn't.
And
No, if there's something on our radar, whether it's a customer, like I always point to the martini because people think they can have 2 or 3 and most people cannot. So it's something that catches us right away. We watch it. We're watching those tables and what they're being served and all of that.
And I have one more question for the police. Is that normal? Would you recommend that a restaurant, when they see someone they're just not sure, they just call? Do they call the police, the regular number? Do they call 911? What do they do? What are they supposed to do?
If they have a question about a patron in their establishment, they can certainly call us.
They're paying their bill and they look a little tipsy.
Well, can I ask a question about that then? So a refusal to serve, someone comes in and they're intoxicated, and we call the police, and we haven't served them, I'm assuming that we would have no liability, in that
Right, exactly.
regard.
And that keeps them from getting behind the wheel of a car and causing an accident.
Right, and then the second question I would have is, someone comes into the establishment, they sit down, they're chatting, they seem fine, they have one drink, and we realize that they're not, what's the recommendation that we do at that point?
Again, if you can't get them a ride home, you can certainly call us, and we can assist if
Yeah.
they're not cooperatives. I know
Okay.
some people will stay and have water or whatever.
Yep, okay.
So there's no disadvantage to the business to call freely if they have any doubt?
I don't believe so.
I mean, is there a sort of like you'll get in the newspaper? I know people sometimes hesitate to call.
No, if there's no, for us, if there was no disadvantage, we would absolutely call. I mean, we've driven people home, you know, people that have come in and we haven't served, we've driven home because we know them. So it's definitely something we're aware of and
So I
try
think
to be diligent.
It would actually look good, I think, in the newspaper if you see that a business is calling the police because they're concerned about I don't know how it's worded, but if they're concerned about a client, it seems like that would be good publicity for the restaurant.
Council, any questions?
Just a couple. Do you know when the last drink was served to this particular person, to the driver?
Not to the driver.
No. And do you
I only know kind of the time they walked in the door and the time they walked out of the door, and roughly where they were seating during that time.
And what was the number of people in the party total over
It was
on that
primarily
bill?
two. It was primarily two. But like I said, it was the bartender, not my observation. The bartender said there were people coming in and out, and that they bought a couple at the bar a drink, and so that was her, you know, that observation came from there. So I'm just giving mine, you know, what I know to be true.
So the bartender said that the patron looked fine when he left?
That's what she said.
Okay, and nothing about speech or eyes?
Nope,
or
she said that
breath?
and it's something, I don't know if anyone here has ever taken a tip certification or serve-safe video. If a patron is sitting, you know, most of the day and having one or two drinks per hour, they might seem fine. It's when they're getting up, they're on the move and whatnot. So we always, part of our training is encouraging people to watch people when they walk to the bathroom, to watch when they come back and try to get back in their chair, because someone can seem fine if they're just sitting and not moving most of the day. It's when they start kind of going that they're not fine.
I don't have any other questions. Thank you.
Thank you.
Chief Burrows, you have considered a recommendation. Do you have any recommendation at all for this situation?
If you find a responsible, we'd recommend a one-day suspension, based on the fact that we had a previous 94J arrest out of town.
Okay. Go ahead,
What
Franny.
about the idea of, in addition to that, the question of video surveillance, since this is the
So
second?
first, we need to close the hearing
Right,
and
I think
and make a
that's more
decision about whether
for
there's a
deliberation
fine.
than, so I'm going to close the hearing. If you have, you can't ask any more questions. No more information can come before us once we close the hearing. So it doesn't look like there are any further questions, so thank you very much. We'll declare the hearing closed, and we're going to deliberate on whether, first of all, we find a violation, and second of all, if so, what penalty we should impose. So, who wants to start off? Janet?
I would say that under the circumstances, given the proximity and time of the drinking in the restaurant and the accident in the parking lot and the observation of the police officer of all the signs that the person had been drinking pretty heavily, I think that there has to have been a violation of the overservice law, even if nobody in the restaurant was able to verify it. It's a tough call, but this is a case where there was an accident in the parking lot, which was unfortunate for the second car, but it was fortunate for everybody else who might have been driving around at the time, because the driver number one did not get beyond the parking lot where he might have done even more damage. So, and the second driver was injured, but not really badly. So I would say that on the first issue, I think that we should find a violation of the state alcoholic beverage law.
I second.
I agree. I'd like to add that I find it concerning that that there were a couple people there for 6 hours, and that there is so little knowledge as far as what their activity was overall. I can attribute some of that due to the fact that the employee who was primarily interacting with them is obviously no longer working for the Red Raven, so obviously there's some level of knowledge lost there. But it is concerning to me that there's so little understanding of what they were doing in the establishment, and they were there for such a long period of time. And so I don't know if there's something that we can do to that effect, or whether or not, there's any sort of remedy for this sort of thing happening in the future.
Katie?
Yeah, I mean, it is a hard one because I do think, this person caused an accident and was clearly drunk when they caused this accident. That's not a question, and it was right after they left the establishment. So, to me, logic states that the person was drunk when they were served their last beverage at the Red Raven. I think we often have trouble with this when we have these incidents before us, though, because my understanding and the guidance we've received, and the guidance, sort of the understanding of the different cases that have gone before the ABCC, they don't necessarily always follow that logic when they're making these rulings, and they're basing it a lot on what the person was actually served or had, and unfortunately with this, receipt and without the actual server being here, we don't know how much this person had. It was over an extended period of time. Again, to me, a logical person would determine that this person was drunk when they left and caused an accident, and so they were overserved when they were given their last beverage. So I do lean towards finding a violation, but I think we need to, I don't know, it's frustrating sometimes how these go. I don't have a concern about the owners not being there. It's unfortunate that the server is no longer with the establishment. We get these for a variety of reasons months after they happen, and so in this case, the server is not there. The owners of this establishment, I think, are actually on their premise a lot more than owners of a lot of other establishments, so that's not a concern to me that they specifically didn't know what was happening. It was the server's job to know. But anyways, I think I would agree that there was a violation, and then we can talk about, how we feel about the sort of consequences of that after.
Franny?
Well, I seconded it.
She didn't make a motion. It was a
Oh,
statement.
you weren't? I definitely think we should find, it doesn't seem so hard for me because he pleaded, I have to admit, I don't watch many law shows, and for some reason I get confused. To plead out
you and
means he
Tom.
pled guilty, right? Okay, I just wanted to make sure.
But unfortunately, we can't go based on that, because even when they plea out in other situations, it doesn't mean that we automatically can find that they were overserved, and that's what we've run into in some of these other places. And, we're supposed to have, very significant evidence of it, and that's what I am often frustrated by, because it seems like we lack that when logically you can assume somebody, left an establishment at 5 o'clock, caused an accident, 2 minutes later, and did it because they were drunk. Of course they were drunk when they left the establishment, and should have been noticed that they were drunk when they're given their last drink, but unfortunately, the law doesn't always seem to kind of back that up, but.
So I guess that's what you're confused about, because it seems so
I'm not
obvious to me.
confused, I'm frustrated.
The owners agree that that's probably what happened. Everybody seems to agree.
Right.
But I guess what you're saying is hard, whether they were drunk before their last drink, is what
Whether
you're
we
saying.
can legally find that they were drunk. I mean,
Before the last
personally, I
drink.
believe they were, but, would it stand up under the ABCC? I don't know, but.
Yeah, we have to draw inferences.
Right.
Because
We
what the
don't have
question-
anybody to say absolutely they were drunk when they were.
And we have to draw inferences, especially in this
served their last
situation,
drink,
because we don't know how many people there were drinking these 7 beers, and if it was only these 7 beers.
But you're saying just the question is before their last drink.
Right.
Do you agree that they were drunk?
Oh, yeah.
after
I mean, I
their
always
last
do
drink?
with all of these cases. They're drunk when they get in that car and they cause an accident, or they're arrested, or whatever. That is pretty much never, we don't hear the ones where they're not.
So it
But
just...
That's not
Can I
what we
speak?
get to decide.
It seems to me that we'd have to consult with a physician who knows about bodies. It seemed, my gut feeling is that if you are that drunk and fail all those tests, that you probably were drunk before your very last drink, out of 7 drinks or whatever this was. But
7:15
Yeah, my question's not about,
I
my
see what you
concern's
mean,
not about
it's
the
hard.
gut, it's about the guidance we've received from council and the memo that they sent us, is that it's not, we can't just go, unfortunately, on our gut or sort of what I think is logic. There's, I mean, they often, the UBCC cases, some of the ones were quoted was that, 5 or 6 beers was okay, but 7 or 8 wasn't, and so when we don't have that evidence, it's
Okay, let me correct one statement I think you made, Franny, that
Yeah.
he pled guilty. He did not plead guilty. He pled no contest, basically. He pled to a special Massachusetts plea that says you can say, I plead not guilty, but I find there are sufficient facts to find me guilty if you go to trial. That leads generally to a sentence by the judge of a continuance without a finding that the person is guilty, and eventually, assuming they don't get in any trouble in the interim, dismissing the case completely. So there is never any finding of guilty. So I think the standard, and I'm looking for the memo from town council, I can't find it online, but I think the standard we have to decide is, under the statute, is whether an obviously intoxicated person was served an alcoholic beverage in this establishment. And so let me ask town council, based on your understanding of the law in this area, is it a reasonable inference for us to make that a person who failed all these sobriety tests within 15 minutes after they left the establishment was an obviously intoxicated person who was served an alcoholic beverage? Is that a reasonable inference for us to make?
Well, I don't want to speak for the board. I will just lay out the criteria here and then what the standard is, which is satisfactory proof. So the board has to feel like there's satisfactory proof before it that there was a violation here. The 4 elements are that the person was physically intoxicated, that the beverage was sold or delivered, that it was alcoholic, and that the premises was licensed. There have been cases that have been close call, or I think would make this a close call in some ways. The ABCC has said that 6 or more White Russians was sufficient for an inference that somebody was intoxicated. 15 beers and 6 martinis, inference somebody was intoxicated. And then there are other cases where it was not justified to infer visible intoxication based on 8 beers or 5 or 6 beers, as Katie said. So I wouldn't want to speak for the board here in terms of your determinations, but you have to feel like there's satisfactory proof here before you based on the evidence.
Yeah, I would not base any finding, if it was, I'm just speaking personally, in this situation on the number of beers that the person was served over this period of time. To me, the question is, if the police officer determined they were obviously intoxicated, which I think is what I see happened here, 15 minutes after they left the establishment, does that lead us reasonably to conclude that the person was served an alcoholic beverage when they were obviously intoxicated? Because that's what we got to find. So.
And just a note to self and all of us, next time, I think we should try to get the receipt from the fellow eater, too, because that would have been helpful in terms of adding up all the numbers of drinks drunk and all. Yeah.
Okay, so based on all that discussion, does anyone feel that they wish to make a motion for finding a violation of the statute?
I move that we find a violation of the alcoholic beverage control law with regard to overservice of a person who was obviously intoxicated.
Okay.
Second.
Okay, any further discussion?
again, I mean, I'll say, logically, for me, it makes sense. We've gone over this with similar cases and haven't gone this way, so it's a little interesting to me that we are this time. But I just think, again, I'm always leaning this way because I do think a reasonable person would make this inference. I'm not 100% sure that would stand up legally, but I'm willing to, me personally, as a reasonable person, am inferring that this person was overserved. So I will vote yes, but with some hesitation.
Any further discussion? Okay, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries unanimously. So, having made that finding, we now need to discuss what the penalty is appropriate. Anybody want to start off that discussion?
Well, I do think a one-day suspension, as recommended, would be a good thing. And I also have a question about the videotaping. It seems useful. I just want to bring that up.
We have in other cases ordered video surveillance setups. Any other comments?
We need to decide which day, since we learned from Red, White, and Brew that we need to specify a day, right, for the suspension if we're going to do that. I'm not sure that videotaping we need to require it. I mean, this is, although it's a second case in a few years, but I would be inclined in this case to leave it to the proprietors, because you can see the problems that we have here. It is a helpful source of information for us to have, because we can watch, although it saves us a lot of time if we don't have the film to watch, but anyhow, but it can be very helpful to be able to see the conduct of the person, and it can be protective of the owners of the restaurant too, if the person does seem to be okay. Whereas in this case, we do have to draw this inference, which is making us feel a little bit uncomfortable. But honestly, I would have a real problem with saying, if we don't come to that conclusion that somebody was served while obviously intoxicated, then we don't get to the next step. And I would have a real problem with just saying, okay, we take no action, we find nothing, no violation, no punishment for something that could have been much worse. And it's precisely the kind of thing we're trying to prevent by managing this, the licensee, so.
Yeah, I mean, I'll say, I think I have found this licensee to have one of the better policies that we've ever seen from establishments on service, and they do seem to do a lot of preventive techniques, but unfortunately, this incident happened and there was an accident. And these are, as Janet said, exactly the things we're trying to prevent. Somebody could have been really, if that person had been driving faster or T-boned that car slightly differently, this could have been a lot more serious. And there could have been a lot of injury. So I am concerned about what happened, and I would agree with Janet that I would lean towards a one-day suspension, but not the required of video surveillance.
Do you have anything to add, Jin-Sung, at all?
I guess the only thing that I would add is that I don't know, I would be in favor of some form of consideration of the fact that this licensee has overall been pretty good about, at least it appears, about sort of this type of problem and handling that sort of thing. And so, if we were to move forward with a one-day suspension, I wouldn't be opposed to having some consideration as far as minimizing the impact of that on sort of their business and that kind of stuff. Because I think that it's important to know that while there was a violation here, that the history of this licensee indicates that, they do pay attention and sort of definitely are concerned about this kind of thing. And I think that it would be wise for the board's decision to reflect that knowledge as well.
Okay, and I'll note that the owners of the establishment have admitted that they made a mistake and have taken some corrective action against the employee and have taken steps not to prevent this from occurring again in the future, and certainly any kind of penalty consideration of contrition is an important factor. So somebody want to make a motion about the penalty?
I just wanted to comment that I liked those two lessons that you tell the people about the, being responsible once they have one drink, and also that you don't need the money so much that you need to sell another drink to them. I think it sounds like a very good training. I move that we give a one-day suspension, and on a day that's
You have to pick an actual date.
Okay, on 3 Wednesdays from now.
Which is what, the
October
12th?
12th.
Okay.
Second.
Second?
Any further discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you. All right, next item on the agenda. Selectmen to take a position on warrant articles and assign selectmen representative.
Peter, can I ask you for a favor? Can we go through the consent agenda? Because I know there's one item in the consent agenda that I want to take off. And Robert here, the assistant town planner, is here to address it. It should be fairly quick, but I'd like him to be able to go home and not have to sit through our entire selectmen's business. Is there some way to...
Anybody have any objection to moving up the consent agenda? Okay, I'm going to read the consent agenda. Number 10 on the selectmen's agenda. First on the consent agenda is a site plan special permit amendment.
I'm going to hold that.
Okay. Number 11, right of first offer agreement, the Shabbat Center of Acton, 148 Great Road. I'm going to hold that. Number 12, committee appointment, Diana Nestorova, Acton Boxborough Cultural Council. Next, 13, a committee appointment, David Martin, the MBTA Advisory Board. Number 14, Eagle Scout Court of Honor, Jack Lanston Maddox, October 15th, 2016.
I'll just note that Janet is doing this, not me.
Selectman Adachi. Number 15, one-day alcoholic beverage license for Marcia L. Anderson at Nora Park, October 15, 2016.
I'm going to hold that.
Number 16, one-day alcoholic beverage license, Michaela Moran, October 1st, 2016. Number 17, one-day alcoholic beverage license, Natalia Kamaraskaya, Nagog Woods Clubhouse, November 19, 2016. Number 18, one-day alcoholic beverage license, Patricia Connolly, Nagog Woods Clubhouse, on October 22, 2016. Number 19, a one-day alcoholic beverage license for Mary Doherty at Nara Park, October 2, 2016. Number 20, a request for a waiver of town fees from Ironwork Farm. Number 21 is meeting minutes of May 23, 2016, and July 18, 2016. Number 22 is accept a gift from Natural Resources, Selectmen to accept a gift totaling $212 from Eric Liu, Eagle Scout Project fundraiser to be used toward future trail maintenance projects. Number 23, request to dispose of obsolete material, Acton Memorial Library. So we held 3 items, number 10, number 11, number 15. Somebody want to move to approve consent agenda items 12, 13, 14, and 16 through 23?
So moved. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That's unanimous. Janet, you want to talk about number 10?
Yes, I pulled this off because this is labeled an amendment, and because I've been sitting in on the Design Review Board meetings to discuss this proposed amendment, it actually is, it was supposed to be a meeting with DRB to address the Board of Selectmen's requirement that the applicant resolve the concern the DRB had about this exposed foundation facing Great Road. This is where Pegasus used to be, the tack shop used to be. And what was presented to the DRB at their meetings, it was actually 2 meetings, was a building where, because there's going to be an underground garage, the whole thing is now elevated probably a foot and a half, and so there's even more kind of foundation exposed, which the proponent is proposing to disguise with I guess, a stone wall in front. I think that there were some concerns. DRB submitted its memorandum following its second meeting with the proponent. They've made a couple of recommendations about and they want about the exposed foundation and also about this something, I think it's about plantings and anyhow. So what my suggestion would be, so that because the proponents are not here, because this was put on consent, I think at the urging of the planning department, is that we approve the proposed amendment with the condition that the applicant, the petitioner, go back to the design review board to make sure to explain how it proposes to address the concerns that the DRB has about the foundation. We did that before, and the whole purpose of the meeting with the DRB, the last couple of meetings, was to comply with our earlier order, I think it was in June, about this project. But the project is not the same project that we approved in June. It's a different one. And so, well, it's elevated. They've changed the height. It doesn't concern planning. Planning has recommended that we approve it, but I would like to add a condition that the proponent go back to the design review board to address their concerns on which they've commented in their memorandum about the project.
Any discussion? Okay. Sure.
Thank you, Janet. In light of that the architect and the civil engineer was not there, that was recommended that they should be there. I would be in agreement with this. I think this would be fair. I think this would be something that they should have to go back together and discuss this in the light of that the engineer and the architect was not there to explain the plans.
Okay,
So-
that's a good point.
so
I think that we should recommend that the applicant go back with the engineer and the architect, or the applicant's engineer and architect meet with the design review board, and to talk over the DRB's concern identified in this memorandum, and in particular, their basically their comments. I mean, they're concerned about the concrete wall and the exposure, and they had suggested some substitute plantings because the plantings they were proposing, a pear tree, is invasive. They also had suggested, I guess, grasses that could kind of help to mask what is otherwise going to be just this bare face of wall. So there are some aesthetic concerns, and so I think that if we could just approve the proposed amended plan with subject to condition that the applicant go back with the engineer or send the engineer and the architect back to meet with the DRB to sort of iron out these details, then I think that's all I'm seeking, because I don't want to go on at length because the applicant is not here. There's no representative of the applicant here because they assumed that it would be on consent and it would just be rubber stamped by us. And I sort of upset the apple cart by not letting it get rubber stamped.
I will make the motion that we approve the site plan special permit number 04/22/2016-462 with the condition that the applicant return to the DRB with their engineer and architect to discuss the DRB's concerns.
Second.
Okay, all in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? I'm going to abstain because I was not here for the original hearing on the site, so motion carries with one abstention. I pulled number 11. This is an interesting situation. I'd never heard of this before. It makes a lot of sense to me, but is this the first time we've ever done this in town?
First time I've ever seen it in my almost 40 years, correct?
Yeah, I haven't seen a plan either. I mean, my general understanding was you couldn't prevent a use of a religious structure, but you did have rights to oppose reasonable restrictions on size and, parking and those kind of things, although I think those arguments were raised with the Mormon temple along Route 2 in Belmont, and they all lost, which is a massive structure. But I would have liked to see a plan or something, so I understand. I don't even know where this is on Great Road.
Well, it's almost across from the Trader Joe shopping center, right?
Okay.
Just across from there.
Okay.
It just looks like a single-family house.
Okay.
I think this was an issue that was negotiated for quite some time between counsel for the Shabbat and town council. I don't know if Robert may be a little more familiar with the site, but I think what's interesting is it recognizes there is a Dover Amendment issue going on with this, and it also, because there was a concern that it would, in essence, create problems with the FAR, that we actually would get the right of first refusal to acquire the property should it go up for sale. And I think some of this might actually relate, and I'm going way back a few years ago when we were still trying to work out the right-of-way for the rail trail, that there were some rail trail right-of-way issues with the Shabbat, and that's when we started discussing some of these issues.
So FAR applies to commercial properties, right? But not single-family homes, right? So it's,
well, like I said,
so this would be treated as, as if it was a commercial property, I guess. I mean,
right.
So okay. Other than that, I don't have. I mean, if it's not going to be the Mormon temple that's in Belmont, it's okay with me, I guess.
Do you want to move to approve it? Or
I'll accept the motion. I usually don't move as chair.
I'll move to approve the right of first offer agreement with the Chabad Center of Acton.
A second.
All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
That carries unanimously. Katie, I think you pulled number 15, one-day alcoholic beverage license for Marcia Anderson at Nara on October 15th.
Yes, the application was not in our packet, I believe, because we were still waiting for the police chief's recommendation. So there were ones for, I checked this like 6 times because I was like, I don't see it. And then I kept seeing the one for Mary and being like, wait, Mary? But it's Marcia. There are 4 in there, not one for Marcia, but they have plenty of time before October 15th. So we were just going to hold it and put it on our next agenda.
Okay. All right, so that would conclude our consent agenda discussion. Turning back to the Selectmen's business, Selectmen to take position on warrant articles and assign Selectmen representative.
Mr. Chair, if I might, if we could take, number 5 out of order, because Mr. Levine is here and it shouldn't take too much time.
Okay. Take number 5, sewer fee privilege extension on payment request for 248 High Street. We have a memo from Corey York, I believe, in the package.
Just as a recap, usually the sewer privilege fee is paid upon issuance of building permit. The request is that it be paid upon issuance of the first occupancy permit.
Just to clarify, that was my one question. So it would be the first occupancy permit, not like the last house or anything? Sure.
I appreciate that, by the way. I think what we were just trying to ask was if we could pay when each occupancy permit is issued, then to pay the sewer privilege fee. Just asking if that is a possibility.
When each, you're saying each occupancy permit.
So you got your first house occupancy permit, a couple days later, the next occupancy permit. So to receive an occupancy permit, we come in and pay the sewer privilege fee instead of upfront now, Just, it's an affordable project. There's a lot of upfront fees, just trying to see if this is something the selectmen would be willing to do. We're not asking for any reduction in fees or anything like that, just to see if we can just push it off. I mean, effectively, we're not putting any flow into the system. We're not using something before we're paying for it. It's just a little bit of breathing room. When you do these kind of projects, there's a lot of upfront fees, building permits, water fees, just to kind of get a little breathing room. That's all.
Okay, and you're still agreeing to pay, apparently, as I read the memo, some interest that's accruing?
Yep. There's if the board would agree with this, then I would agree that there's an interest that we would pay, whatever it is, up until the time that we would pay that. So I'm not asking for anybody to, cut any price off of it.
I think it's $15 per month.
Yeah.
For the...
$15 per month, I think you're absolutely right, per month fee, which we pay, and then just to kind of...
And the town engineering department's memo says we don't foresee an issue with approving this request, so we have our policy here that gives us the ability to do this. So what's your pleasure?
You want a motion?
Sure.
I move to approve the sewer privilege fee plan as set forth in the memorandum of September 13 from the engineering department to us, the Board of Selectmen / sewer commissioners.
Second.
All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, number 3 on our agenda, selectmen to take position on warrant articles and assign selectmen representatives. We have a draft warrant, which has to go out Wednesday.
It has to be posted, correct, so it'll have time to include the Finance Committee's recommendations.
And let's see, Steve had said today that he has PowerPoints on each one of these warrant articles. I said, I'm not sure it's necessary that we see the PowerPoints. We have them available if any members want to have any questions or want more details, but I think the explanations are in the warrants, and we can go through them and take positions based on the information we have in the warrant. Any general discussion about these items? So, okay, let's see. We have a list of the motions as well. The first one is to amend the town bylaws. Mr. Chang, again, will move this. That's to appoint to amend the bylaws to allow the appointment of a town meeting temporary moderator. Takes a majority vote. Any discussion on that article? We want to take a position on it?
I move to recommend Article 1.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed, any abstentions? Motion carries unanimously. Article 2, Mr. Chairman will move that the town meeting change the general bylaws as set forth in the article to allow for electronic voting at town meeting. So one thing I noted about this, if I can find it in my agenda here, in my warrant, page 13, they added language from the current bylaw to make clear that even though we would allow electronic voting pursuant to the Mass Constitution and Mass Equal Rights Law, reasonable accommodation shall be made to ensure that equal voting rights of otherwise qualified handicapped individuals present and voting at town meeting are ensured, regardless of the method of voting used, which I like very much to see that language. Certainly the issue of accessibility at town meeting has been raised many times, and I think it's good to have that in our bylaw. So any further discussion about the electronic voting? I understand from Peter Ashton's email today that there will not actually be a demonstration at town meeting. He doesn't have the equipment available, but he will be doing the presentation on this article, so.
I move to recommend Article 2.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries unanimously. Article 3, fund the collective bargaining agreement with the fire union. I've been assigned this article. It's to appropriate $63,546 to fund the first-year cost items, transferring $50,836 from the fiscal year 2017 town operating budget and $12,710 from ambulance enterprise fund retained earnings. So as usual with these, the first year is already contained in the fiscal year budgets, and it's just moving money around as opposed to appropriating new money for this year. Right, Steve? Okay.
But when you vote the first year, you're required then to fund the two other years.
And part of the presentation, as I anticipate, is I think we need to show FY18 because there's going to be a lot of changes. There'll be implementation of advanced life support, so there'll be increased EMT stipends and all that. So that'll need to be part of the presentation.
On the other hand, the agreement is intended to save the town more money than it costs because of the way that advanced life support operates and the billing that the fire department is able to do.
Not so much savings, it will generate more revenue, probably around $300,000 more a year in revenue.
Okay. Somebody want to make a motion to
I'll move to recommend Article 3.
Second.
All in favor? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? The motion carries unanimously. Article 4, fund the senior center lease. This requires a 2/3 vote, and Ms. Osmond is the selectman assigned to appropriate $252,000 to fund the first-year lease. $100,000 to transfer from Concord Muse gift account, $77,000 to be transferred from the Audubon Hill gift account, and $75,000 to be transferred from free cash. This is similar to the union contracts in that once the town meeting votes to appropriate funds to fund the first year of the lease, the town is on the hook for all. Is it a 15-year lease? 10-year lease, for all 10 years. So any further discussion about the senior center lease warrant article?
I should just point out that the amount is, for the first year, includes a deposit of 1 month plus eight months of rent, some fit up to bring IT onto the property, moving costs, some kitchen equipment, and our share of utilities on the building. So it's not just the lease we'd be seeking. And then in FY18, the lease would be incorporated in the town's operational budget.
And how much would the lease be in FY18 and the other years going forward?
It'd be like 16,000 times 12, whatever that is.
Okay. Okay.
Somebody want to make a motion on the senior center lease article?
So moved. I move that we fund the senior center lease. and that we
You want to move that we recommend the article, Franny?
Oh, that too. That too. I move that we recommend this Article 4 of funding the senior center lease.
All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstention? Motion carries unanimously. Article 5, lease of 362, 364 Main Street for Kennedy Landscaping. This requires a 2/3 vote as well. Selectman Green.
Correct.
Any discussion about this or explanation required? Okay.
Move we recommend Article 5.
Second.
All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries unanimously. And Article 6, land acquisition Piper Lane.
Yeah, this, it did not move forward enough to get to have an appraisal done, so we haven't had an appraisal done, so we're not
So can we pull it off? 'Cause we
I mean, the
haven't
board
posted
could
the-
pull it off tonight,
Yeah.
because the warrant's not posted, so if it's the board's desire, we could
Why don't we
remove this
do that
article.
then?
Yeah, I'd recommend we pull it off,
Rather than
because
have
it's
it in
cleaner
there,
than
yeah.
to take no action.
Then we don't have to take a
It would be, we can get it out of the draft, right, so it won't
Right.
show
Right.
up. That's
Right,
good.
right.
I'm hoping it comes forward in the future, but we can't be sure.
All right, somebody want to, do we need a motion to remove it from the warrant, or?
You know, when we kind of set the warrant back in August, we did include it, so I think it'd be cleaner if the board just voted.
Okay, somebody want to make a motion to
I
remove it?
move to remove Article 6, land acquisition Piper Lane from the final warrant.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries unanimously. Article 7, land acquisition, 53 River Street, a two-thirds vote, to appropriate $908,000 to fund the acquisition. Let me ask a question about that. The purchase price is $875,000. Okay, let me...
We have, in addition to the 875 funds, to do, I think, a Phase 1 and 2 environmental on the property as well.
Okay, so there's nothing in this summary or the description of the article that has the price of it, I guess, huh?
We can change that tomorrow. It was in my PowerPoint, if you let me make it.
Okay, I don't see any number in the article, so...
We usually add that in the motion.
The motion has 908.
You've got the
but
motion.
It doesn't break it down.
Summary, we could
Yeah.
include that in the summary.
Yeah, then, you know.
And we should just
especially
note for the
FinCom wants to do
public that we are now proposing to do this with general funds. Because I told a lot of people to wait till Monday about this, and we are proposing to fund this
From
through the general
fund,
fund.
right.
For all of those listening, through free cash.
Right.
Which has
Well,
now
the
been
motion is
certified.
written. The motion itself is written that way.
I know, I told a lot of people to watch this meeting to hear how we were funding it. I don't want to say it out loud, and they don't
Find
have the
other
sheet in front of them.
sources.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'd
Yeah.
like to comment on this, that I think this is a great example, and because it has all four arms of the community preservation.
But we're not
initiative,
using CPA money.
Even though we're not using CPA
Just-
money, but it has interest for historic, housing, open space, and recreation, and it's a great example of what we can do around town, working together with multiple committees, so.
Maybe.
That's right. The plan is to put together a master planning committee, just like we did with the Walker property on Main Street, and come up with recommendations on the actual plan for using the property and developing it in the future. So,
Move to recommend Article 7.
Second.
all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? The motion carries unanimously. I have all of the zoning articles. I will leave it up to Ray Jacoby to do the presentations for those. Can we just take those all together? Are there any questions? Article 8 is amend zoning bylaw accessory apartments. Article 9, amend the bylaw to non-conforming lots, additions, replacements. Article 10, to amend the zoning bylaw about outdoor lighting. 11 is restaurant seating zoning bylaw, and 12 is the sign bylaw. Any discussion on any of those?
Can you confirm that the planning board has recommended all of these?
Yeah.
I assume, but
Yeah,
if
they
there's...
have, I think.
Yeah.
Okay, then I would make a motion to recommend Articles 8 through 12.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, any abstentions? The motion carries unanimously.
May I ask a question, please?
Certainly.
All of these zoning articles are going to bypass special permits. I'm wondering if this is going to impact the budget, because we use the monies that you get from special permits for new growth, and I was wondering if you calculated the loss, or if it's going to be a loss,
Have not.
but it will be a loss.
Me?
It will be a loss.
It'll also be less staff time.
Oh, okay.
Is there a fee for a special permit beyond the building permits? Okay. I just thought it was a hearing, but, okay. I mean, there is a fee attached to it, okay.
But it's not like huge, like
Okay.
$100 or something.
Can we comment on this draft a little more?
Sure.
I just had two little comments on the draft. One was, there was one of the pictures had, the picture that went with the Kennedy property. It showed buildings where there aren't buildings anymore, I believe, unless I'm looking at it wrong. And I wondered if we could get a more updated map. I'm trying to find that page.
Page 16. Yeah, it might have the...
See where there's houses between Route 2?
Yeah.
And I thought that would be confusing to people. Maybe we could white them out?
Yeah, I mean, maybe. Yeah, we can, those houses aren't there anymore.
I mean,
It's
it
not-
might-
I mean, we're not talking about the rest of the property, but...
No, but it might help orient people. They might, I just thought...
Sure. I think most people in town know where Kennedy's is.
Well...
And I don't think, well, whatever, it's fine, yes.
Anyway. And the other thing was, I hear we are providing van service. Is that going to go into the draft? I mean, is that going to go into the final copy? It is. Oh, I don't know why I didn't see it. Oh, okay. So it's in there. Great, thank you. Oh, yeah, yeah. I guess I usually, it was at the beginning or something. I don't know why I didn't. Okay. I don't know why I didn't see it.
Okay, moving on. Selectmen to take a position on Minuteman article. Selectman Adachi.
This is not obligatory. I thought I would get it on the agenda only because I know the school committee voted to endorse the ballot question tomorrow at their meeting, I think September 1st. And I know that in other towns, boards of selectmen and school committees have sort of been formally issuing statements of support about the ballot vote. I guess that the principal reason that we could do so without ruffling any feathers is that we recommended the article on April 4th at annual town meeting about the building project, and this is the same proposal. This is just an alternative way of getting approval because for town meeting approach to approval, we needed not unanimity, but we needed no member town to vote to disapprove the building project. A number of the towns that are departing from the district took no action, and the balance of the towns, with the exception of Belmont, voted overwhelmingly to approve the building project debt. Belmont was the only town whose town meeting voted to disapprove the proposed building debt, and they did not do so by an overwhelming, it wasn't a unanimous vote, it was split, with maybe 1/3, 2/3, or maybe even a larger number voting in support of the building project. So that's why we're here, and so if we were to endorse or support the ballot question, it would basically be doing the same thing that we did in recommending the same article at town meeting, but I leave it to you to decide what you're comfortable doing, so.
I move to...
Just so everybody knows, and I don't think the numbers have changed, but according to Minuteman and Superintendent McQuillan, the capital cost would probably kick in FY20, and this is all estimates, obviously, right now. It'd be about a $325,000 impact on the town budget.
Could I ask you, I had put a note out on Acton Chinese list, and I know there's a table of this at the Minuteman site, but do you have the number offhand? Because somebody asked.
No, I got it off their site as well.
Somebody asked what the average tax burden
It's
per
on,
year.
it's on a table on their site.
Okay, so you
That's how
don't
I
have it in your mind? Okay.
This is for
And
Acton, you want to
Yeah,
know?
yeah, for Acton.
I have it in the slides. I think it's, now, of course, my brain is so full of other stuff, I had to do a brain dump, so I don't have that information at my fingertips, but I can dig it out for you.
If you could,
Okay,
I want to
yeah.
answer that
Okay.
to the email list. Thanks.
I will say there was a significant change just this week. I think we got an email from the superintendent conveying the opinion of the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education that they, under their new regs, this has been a contentious issue for this whole, interminable process, that a town like Boxborough, which has voted to withdraw from the system, if they want to send students there in the future, their tuition will be set not just at the normal tuition rate, which has been lower for out-of-district students than in-district students in the past. That's been corrected, I think, but also there will be a capital contribution number added to their tuition, so they're actually helping to pay for the new school as well as the ongoing student costs. So that should help in the future.
That capital contribution, I think the commissioner had issued an earlier statement committing to requiring out-of-district, the towns to contribute toward capital, but it wasn't all that firm, and so this was a really good sign that the Commissioner of Education is committing to supporting Minuteman and other districts that are providing voc tech ed. I mean, there seems to be, certainly under the current governor, there's a lot more interest in vocational technical education, recognizing that it creates a lot of job opportunities for people. And in the near future, I guess we're going to have more demand than right now. Perhaps we're able to fill spots based on our current vocational technical schools. So anyhow, but.
Okay, somebody want to make a motion?
I'll move that we support, that the Board of Selectmen supports question 1 on the ballot on Tuesday, September 20th, to authorize borrowing to pay construction costs for a new Minuteman Regional Vocational Technical High School.
Second.
All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Hearing none, the motion carries unanimously.
Thank you very much.
I would like to remind people that the polls are only open from 12 to 8, even though you said it before.
And only at RJ Gray.
And only at RJ Gray. It's different from usual polling places.
All right, moving on, number 7 on the agenda, Selectmen to authorize town manager to sign purchase and sale agreement for 53 River Street. I had one comment on this. There's, on page 7, paragraph 28, it says, notwithstanding anything herein to the contrary, buyer's obligations are expressly subject to and contingent upon obtaining town meeting approval and appropriation of funds, including receiving a favorable recommendation from the Community Preservation Commission and passage of any required funding at town meeting. I think we need to take CPC out of there since we're not.
Yeah, initially when we were talking about buying this, it was
Right.
CPA funds, all right.
Yeah, so I think it could read obtaining town meeting approval and appropriation of funds and passage of any required any required funding at town meeting.
Oh, it's definitely no.
Mr. Lazaro has requested that we have a plaque placed on the property recognizing their contribution to the town of Acton, and we've agreed to do that.
I move to authorize the town manager to sign the purchase and sale agreement for 53 River Street as amended by Peter.
Second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay, any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries unanimously. Next item on the agenda is a request to use the town seal by the Acton Boxborough Rotary Club. I see no one here. This came from a citizen who is a member of the Rotary asking us to do this. I don't see anybody here to support this request or speak about it. Are there any comments by members of the board? Yes.
You know, the Rotary is a really good organization and all, but my concern is that this wouldn't be the only request. That's my concern, and especially if there's not close monitoring of where the seal is used, it could end up appearing to, it will, inevitably, it will be providing imprimatur, an official imprimatur, even if we okay its use. And then my other concern is that there will be other people who will want the same thing because they're a nice organization. And I think it's fine when town works with other organizations, but I have a problem with having our seal be used other than for official town business, so.
Katie?
I just want to say I agree with Janet. I very much appreciate the work of the Acton-Boxborough Rotary Club in our town and everything they do for our community. However, I share the concern about the sort of expansion of this. And, you know, frankly, our town seal is representative of the town. And so putting it on something, you know, while they don't say that the town is endorsing it, that's how it comes across. And, you know, if we approve it for the Acton-Boxborough, for the Rotary Club, if other organizations come forward, you know, what if there's one that we don't agree with politically or other reasons, and you get into dicier waters. So while I again, am extremely grateful for all of their work, I just don't think it's appropriate.
Fran?
Yeah, I tend to agree with what's been said. I feel sort of sad. I feel sorry for this person because it's the kind of thing that's always done, and, you know, once you say something, suddenly it messes it up. And so I feel a little bad about that. I can relate, and also I know they do such good work, and they're also very specific about nothing religious. You know, they keep religion out of everything, and, you know, so there are a lot of things that really mean that it's unlikely to have anything they're doing be controversial for the town, but I do agree that it sort of opens up a can of worms, and you want the things to have the seal that really are the town, you know, are specifically approved by the town.
Okay, hearing no support for that request, I personally agree with the comments that have made about both the service the Rotary Club provides to the town, but also the reluctance to allow the town seal to be used outside of a town business. We'll move on.
Well, should I make a motion to deny the request so it's official, or do you want to just leave it be?
I mean, the people didn't show up really to support it. If they want to come back at some time in the future, that's up to us, I guess. I mean, if you want to recommend that you want to make a motion, that's fine.
Yeah, I mean, I think they made a request, so if somebody's going to get back to them about what our response is, I think it should be an actual vote of our board. So I'll move to deny the request for the use of the town seal.
Second?
All in favor of the motion, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Any abstention? Motion carries unanimously. And we do have a PowerPoint for the discussion on the town hall paint color.
So this is the town hall as a white building. And that's the historic color that's been suggested, so kind of a beige with brown trim. Green shutters, correct. Probably not. Andrea was messing around with an app this weekend, so this is about as good as we could do with showing the color. Just before we talk about color, just so everybody knows, we went out to bid. We budgeted at annual town meeting $162,000. So interesting how it worked out. The base bid was the historic color, then we did an alternate for white only. So as you can see, the low bid for color was $124,000. But if we opted to go with white, The alternate was minus 30,000 off of the bid of 134,000. So it's basically 104,000 versus 124 in terms of cost. But as I said, both options came well under the budgeted amount of 162,000.
Katie?
I'll say Peter, Jan, and I attended the forum that the Historic District Commission put on about the town hall paint colors, and I think Jan and I reported on it in our Selectmen's reports. And there is a reason that the town hall was originally painted this color. It was about sort of the historic colors of the time and blending into nature and all of these things, and then it was moved to white, we believe, sort of more in the 40s when it was cheaper and colors were in short supply. And to me, I think it's worth going back to historic colors. I don't think they're as jarring as some people originally thought. Andrea actually brought some boards, with the colors painted on them so you could see what they'd look like, and they really are quite nice, and I think it would bring it back to sort of its original status, and the original idea of how Town Hall was supposed to look within its surroundings. So I am in support of the color, and as Steve notes, it's still well under what we had budgeted, so I don't have any financial concerns.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I agree that was, that presentation about historical colors was a real eye-opener because, I think that too many people have seen the one painting with a pretty garish mustard yellow and crummy dark brown, and it's the garish yellow that really, I think a lot of people found kind of jarringly unacceptable. I think that, the real siding was more of a cream color, sort of shown here. There was some discussion at that meeting of somebody's, I don't know if it's HTC or Historical Commission, putting together, doing, what basically Andrea did, fooling around. But I think that it would probably go a long way toward allaying people's concerns about the colors. It is a much more muted kind of effect than the bright white. And I rather like the idea of doing something. I was reminded that every time I drive into Concord Center, Concord's townhouse is really a shade of pink. And I'm sure that, I don't know if it's always been pink or at some point it's a sort of, or the building next to the townhouse, whatever, but it's, that building is pink, it's historical, obviously, and maybe it wasn't always that color, and perhaps some people found it objectionable.
The building is owned by the owner of 30 Sudbury Road, by the way.
Oh, really? So is that an office building? I thought it was just sort of an extension I thought it was town hall offices or something. But they ought to be there. Looks bigger.
Yeah, go ahead, Franny.
I actually like white buildings, and I wouldn't say it was white, because when I looked at it when I came in tonight, it actually was pink. And so I turned around, and there was the sunset, and that's what's one nice thing about white buildings, it actually does take on the colors around it. I also am sort of resistant to sort of idolizing certain periods of history, like we're going to go with this one. But then again, when it was built, I just want to remember that this is the colors when it was built. And so that seems reasonable. And it looks very pretty. That actually looks very pretty. So even though I like white and I like that it reflects, I think I'm inclined to support painting it in these colors.
Yeah, what we learned at the forum was that prior to the mid-1800s, I guess, was the Greek Revival period, and buildings were painted white to reflect Greek marble, reflecting the architectural style, and then architects started to say, well, these buildings are in rural settings and they're surrounded by trees and landscapes and they ought to fit into the landscape rather than be white, so they started to paint them more earth tone colors. I will say we no longer have a dirt road that leads up to Acton's Town Hall, and it's not surrounded by fields and trees. But I do like the colors, I got to say. They are kind of an off-white, really. It's a buff kind of color. And so I'm in favor of going with the historic colors, just to reflect the fact that that's the way they were first colored when they were painted.
I have no real strong opinions as far as the color of Town Hall. I do agree that, having some color is nice, but really I don't have a strong opinion either way.
I'll also say that the FinCom's objections at town meeting that it would be more expensive to paint it color is offset by the fact that we're like 40 grand under what the budgeted amount was. So somebody want to make a motion?
I'll move that we approve painting Town Hall the historic colors. And do I have to make a motion about the bid, or you just do that?
No.
Okay. So I make a motion to, paint Town Hall.
Second.
Colors.
All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries unanimously. And I'll take I believe that concludes our business for this evening.
Move to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor, please say aye. Aye.